I think it's really difficult to break that mindset of comfort versus opportunity. I mean, you will never know what you're capable of accomplishing unless you get out there and you step outside your comfort zone, step into the dark just a little bit and say, hey, what else is there?
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Abundant Journey podcast. As always, we're glad you're joining us. I'm your host, Nick James, with Nick Offenkamp, and we're super excited about our episode today. We have a guest coming to you from the other side of the country. For those of you who follow us, we are in the Pacific Northwest, and we got David Decker hanging out with us today. David, how are you, sir?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I want to give you a chance to tell us what you're doing a day in the life right now, but just by way of background, you and I have connected on a networking group, mastermind group called the Better Life Tribe, and you are a self-storage guru. You eat, sleep, breathe self-storage, I think, but that has served you well in what you're doing now and in your past. But I love your story. So again, not to steal your thunder, but tell us a little bit about the day in the life for David.
Sure. Yeah, I've been doing self-storage for 20 years. And I kind of fell into it by accident. We could talk about that, but it's one of these things that I just committed my life to it, and it has served me well to just become an expert in the field. And right now, I'm consulting as a VP of storage for Open Door Capital with Brandon Turner, and it's a great story of how I ended up there, and building a portfolio of properties and operating those properties for our investors, and just having a great time on the side. I'm actually building my own first facility. We're going to do a storage conversion and doing a full syndication by myself. So I'm with a couple of amazing partners. So yeah, a lot going on in life and having a great time doing it.
I love that. And we'll get into more of that and the busyness of your life now. I want to go more into the backstory, but let's get to know you a little bit more in the audience. Where do you live? What's family life look like? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. Yeah. Born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. So it's sort of the West. And over the years have moved across country for different jobs and ended up right now. I'm just north of Albany, New York. I'm a proud father of 6 kids, which blows a lot of people's minds, but it was sort of an accident. We ended up, we had 3. I was done. My wife said, "Oh, God says there's one more. I feel it." And I said, "Well, okay, let's." So we had 4, and then we had surprise twins. So 4 to 6 really fast. And you just roll with the punches when that gets served onto your plate. But yeah, doing well. I'm an outdoorsy guy. I've been training for an ultra marathon in November. Wish me luck.
Coming up.
And and trying to get outdoors and enjoy the beautiful trees up here in this part of the country. But yeah, the day in the life of David Decker.
I love it.
Ultra marathon has a pretty broad definition. So how many miles is your race in November?
It's a 50 miler. It's okay. The JFK 50 it's near Baltimore.
Wow. That's awesome.
Well, I did a 26 mile, and I just was going to say I did a 26 mile and almost died and said never again. So the fact that you're nearly doubling me, good on you.
Yeah. I don't know if it's really impressive or really stupid, but it gets me going.
Will this be one of your first events, or have you done a few races in the past?
This will be my 4th ultra. And like you said, there's a different version of ultra marathon. Most of mine, I've done 3 30-mile races, and then this will be my second 50 miler.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome. I love it. And you might have mentioned this, but how long have you been in the Albany, New York area now?
Going on 3 years. And just prior to that, I was in Pittsburgh for 3 or 4 years. And then before that, of course, back in Utah.
Okay. That sounds good. So with your self-storage, investing, and business, is most of that happening along the East Coast, or are you kind of spread out all over the United States? Where are the markets that you're most invested in?
Currently, we're invested mostly in the Southeast, in Virginia. We're in Georgia. We actually spread all the way over to Nogales, Arizona. And Kentucky. And so kind of that smile, that Southern smile, and we're looking at properties. The property I'm doing myself, excuse me, is in my backyard. It's just over here in Schenectady, New York, the home of GE, and that's kind of a cool town that we're seeing some growth in. But historically, I've managed a lot in Pittsburgh, of course. That's where I was working. Denver, Colorado, and then prior company with Extra Space Storage, where I spent most of my career growing up, was coast to coast, and got to enjoy seeing properties everywhere in the whole country.
Yeah, cool.
That's great.
My question is just how I want to get into how you got started in self storage, because while Nick and I have been talking for the last couple of years about the glories of self storage, for neither of us was it something that we ever dreamed of getting into as we were growing up as kids. You know, it's not like in first grade when they ask, what do you want to do when you grow up? You know, firefighter, doctor, self-storage owner, operator. Usually that last one doesn't quite fit in the pieces. So I'm curious, just kind of some of that's like upbringing, what you thought you were going to get into and how that led into self-storage. And some of it's just like where you saw your first opportunity in this space and what had you to jump at it. So whichever direction you want to go with that question is totally fine. But I'm just curious how you got into this space.
Yeah, it's probably the same story for a lot of people. My story started, I think, in high school. I actually grew up pretty humble circumstances, and wanted to break out of that lower income stream that I was experiencing as a kid growing up. And I wanted to be a dentist. And I looked at dentists and they said, hey, they make a lot of money, so that's definitely what I want to do. I did a little bit of college and realized I have no interest in putting my hands in someone's mouth, and biology. And I had the opportunity to serve overseas in a mission, and just loved learning, teaching people and learning culture, and building processes and systems. And when I came back, I said, business is where I want to head. And I started going down the business route, got a degree in finance. And at the time, I was doing a lot of my work in life insurance and tax planning, estate planning. And I did about 3 or 4 years as that full sales guy, 100% commission, making what I killed, right? And it was tough work. I realized, I'm not really a salesperson. I love this planning and organizing, but I'm just not a sales guy. Somewhere in there, I got married, and my wife also did not like commission, and she pushed me pretty hard. I went back, got an MBA. In my MBA, I really focused on statistics and operational efficiencies. And I started looking for a job and said, where does this take me? I got a degree in finance. I know money and banking a little bit. And now I like these operational efficiencies. And I had a great mentor who was kind of assigned to me as a college grad student. And he was a CFO who, again, I had no interest in accounting at all. But he would take me out to lunch. He'd look at my resume, he'd do mock interviews. And for whatever reason, he thought I was, had a superpower. I could jump over buildings or something. But he recommended or gave me a reference to a company through a CFO friend of his that was a storage company. And I knew nothing about storage. In fact, when I applied, I literally thought they did storage, data storage, or did something like that because it was an analyst job. And I got this job as an analyst. And as luck would have it, I started the day that this company went public. It was
wow.
Extra Space Storage, literally the same day. And I got to ride that wave for the next 14 years of seeing, the inner workings of a company growing from, I don't know, let's say they were 70 or 80 properties at the time when I started, to over 1,400 locations when I left, and becoming, the largest IPO in self-storage in years and years, one of the largest companies in Utah. And with that ride, waiting it out, I was able to experience being an analyst. I was in revenue management. I was a district manager. I was the senior director of operations when I left, and seeing the whole company from all these different perspectives that I could not replace with any type of education. It's just sticking in one position, one company, and watching it and jumping from angle to angle until I understood the whole business. So when I left, it was on great terms, and I had 3 offers the day I left, because people said, wow, you've been educated by Extra Space. We would love to have you. And it's blossomed since then. And so I'm a big fan, although I know your audience is a lot of entrepreneurs and people starting, but man, the opportunity to learn and the education by sticking around a W-2 for a certain period of time, whatever that is for you, is so valuable. It's so valuable to have that education and really become expert. There's a long story how I got into
No,
storage.
I love that. And I think that's a superpower that gets overlooked often. There's this massive wave, the financial freedom gurus, the get out of corporate America, have your time back, be able to control your life. That message is so loud right now. But it's so funny you talk about that because there's quite a few of our guests that we've had on the show that have said, hey, because of the W-2, it launched me into the next phase. It is the platform that I learned a skill or built my network or, where was able to take those principles and then apply. And, so to be able to look back and have gratitude and to be able to acknowledge that you wouldn't even be where you are today had you not been there for 14 years. I think that's huge.
100%. 100%. I'll share one little nugget that has actually impacted my life dramatically, both from a lesson learned, but also from a financial angle. When I was at Extra Space, I had earned up over time, again, that W-2 corporate job. They were paying out stock options and grants over time. And at some point, I got to the end where those stock grants had to be exercised. There's options, actually. And I got $100,000. And guys, I was young. I had a kid or two. I had never seen that kind of money in my life. I mean, it just blew my mind at $100,000 in cash. And I wanted to know what to do with it. And I invested it in two places. These were with some grad students that I had worked with. Well, as I was later a mentor, just like I had a mentor, and people that I worked with in my grad student or grad studies. So I invested $50,000 with one friend who had built an app. It was app development technology, super high risky environment. And it was a very cool app. I won't go into the details. And I sat on that money and watched it. And then I also invested other $50,000 in a startup technology business that was doing, it was more of a software or SaaS model. So I invested in these two companies. Within a year, I got a letter from the first guy saying, thanks for playing. We got bankrupt. We lost everything. And it crushed me, guys. I mean, it was like everything I had. I lost it all.
Totally.
Yeah. And the other 50, I kept in touch with them. And actually, is it this year or at the end of last year, I got a letter from them saying, congratulations, we've sold. Here's a check for, and it was just shy of $1 million.
Wow.
Oh that blows my mind. Well, again, so I've had this opportunity to learn, look, put yourself out there, take a risk.
Yeah.
Do it a couple times. Don't just put everything in one basket.
Yeah.
You're going to lose money. It's okay. And I learned from that. And I was much more cautious in my due diligence in the future. But to be able to have $1 million cash in this point in my life where I've got education, I got know-how, and now I can put it to use. Yeah. I'm able to go buy my own storage facility. I'm able to, invest passively. I've been able to do some soft or private money loans that I'm really excited about. That's where it gets exciting, is waiting it out, doing the time, and being patient. So anyway, and by the way, the corporate job is what facilitated that opportunity. I would have never got that $100,000, any other way at that point in my career.
Yeah. What years were you at Extra Space? Like how long and kind of what time period?
Yeah, I started in May of 2004, all the way until end of 2017.
Okay. So yeah, a good long tenure that you were there. And I imagine that was a pretty exciting time, not just for Extra Space, but in the just self-storage industry.
Oh man.
It seems like that was kind of a golden age of growth from what I can tell, as far as where people started to really take it seriously as an asset class. Is that a fair?
Oh my goodness, yeah. And if you look at valuations of that time period, I mean, we went public at $12.50 a share. Today's stock price, I'm not even sure what it is today. It's just south of $200 a share.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the company valuation is in the, I don't know what it is, 30 or 40, well, probably not the high now, 20 to 30 billion dollars. It's just it's a crazy growth. It was in at a time when storage was still not sexy. It wasn't very cool.
Yeah.
Today, everybody goes, wow, what a cool, I want to be in storage.
Yeah.
I'm the life of a party when I go to a barbecue, right? I'm talking about torch. Back then, I was the guy that always ruined every party. So it's
Amazing how that changes.
right, right. But no, it was a great time. And again, I don't chalk everything up to luck or circumstance. Again, I know, God puts you in the right place at the right time,
Mhm.
but
Yep.
it takes patience and it
Yeah.
takes work, taking the time.
So with the 13 years or so that you were there, I mean, so I love having you speak to the benefits of sticking it out in a W-2, especially something that's growing in the way that it is and where you're part of that growth and getting to see it from so many different angles. I think there's something really valuable about that. And then, of course, the kind of stock options that you got and able to deploy that capital. But when when did the seeds of the idea of like, I don't know that this is where I want to be forever, I think I want to go out on my own, where do you think that those first started to germinate, and why did you decide to leave after 13 successful years there?
Yeah, I always had this vision of wanting to build something of my own, have my own sandcastle. And
Mm-hmm.
Extra Space had provided all the education, all the leadership, incredible mentorship. I still am very much in touch with those people over there. Um,
Cool.
and I kind of hit the ceiling. I was reporting directly to the COO, who I really respected, somebody I worked with for years and years. And the only way for me to continue to move up the company were probably to kill somebody. So I figured the other alternate route was to go look around. And I think it's important to put your ideas out there, on
Yeah.
social media, on LinkedIn, or whatever your resources are, even your own circles. Put yourself out there as to what you want to do, and people are looking. I mean, you think of the millions of people out there that are as talented, that have all the resources in the world, except education or except your experience, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And people have come to me. So I've never looked for a job since 2004 or 17 when I left. I've always had an opportunity put in my lap and been able to choose. But like I said, that education and experience I think is so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
But that network, it's really where I started to see that network is everything. And I've heard it said your network is your net worth, and I totally believe that, because it's the people that are around me that have watched me grow, that have watched me, in my worst times, right? My mistakes, my whatever it might be. I mean, those are the people that said, yeah, but look where you are today and look what you can offer. Um, that, I think when I changed that mentality that, hey, people do need me for something.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to find the right people. And I was connected very quickly to this company in Pittsburgh that I worked with for several years as a vice president of operations. Then I was headhunted away as the COO of a private equity group in New York, was where I live now. And just huge opportunities to be part of that organization. And then it was actually the start of this year. I said, okay, this is the time. I'm going to stop making a lot of other people money. I'm going to branch out on my own and do my own thing. And I found myself, I'm the storage guy. I know all this operational stuff. I don't know how to raise money. I don't know how to raise debt and to have equity partners. And that's where I was actually an investor with Open Door Capital, and reached out to them and said, guys, why aren't you in storage? Let me build that for you.
Yeah.
And I joined their organization, and it was the perfect opportunity for me to build a company from the ground up. They've got all the resources where I lack, and it's been an awesome ride. And now again, of course, doing my own thing on the side, and we'll probably have other opportunities in the future.
Yeah. I I love that piece of the story, and I want to dive in a little bit more to kind of what you're doing today and how that works. But to go back just one more time to those years in Extra Space, I'm curious. A lot of times when you talk to folks, they stay in the same role for a really long time. And you shared that there was a drive to eventually do your own thing and branch out. But what was the motivation for you in going through different roles within the organization? Was it just opportunity? Was it more pay? Or were there, hey, I need to learn different skills, which is ultimately going to lead me to my goal?
You know what? It's a really good question, because when I was young and starting, it was always about pay, right? When I started at Extra Space right out of grad school, I was making $45,000 a year, which, by the way, is probably more money than I'd ever seen before in my life. So I thought I'd hit the jackpot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the next job. Hey, well, if I take on additional responsibilities, if I do anything else, I'm going to make 55 or 65. So I was always chasing the dollar. I had a really great mentor and boss at Extra Space who literally took me aside one time and said, Dave, you're a smart guy, but you got to quit chasing money.
Mm.
Like what you need to do is make yourself valuable and work your tail off, and money will chase you. And he set me down. And so that was the time when I started saying, look, I'm happy to, like, ironically, I really thought my place in life was this revenue management role, which was, econometrics and statistics and balancing rates. And I love that stuff. And my boss came to me and said, we need your help. You understand the corporate business side, but we need your help out in the field. And it was a total sidestep. It was the same pay. It was a ton more travel. It was a lot less glamorous. It was, one of 30 other people. So I wasn't special anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But that educational experience, which I took, gave me that education to promote me to, once I had the operational side and the business side, they put me back into a corporate role as the senior director of operations, because I knew it all from all angles.
Right.
So education, taking a job just to learn something, even if it's either a downgraded pay or the same pay, I continued to mentor a couple of students along the way. And one of my main advice to a lot of them is, don't aim to become CEO. Aim to build your resume, to build education. And even if that means go work for free for some smart guy, God, think of the education, the value of that education.
Yeah.
So education is critical to becoming an expert. You got to learn from someone.
And that's huge. And I similarly, when I was early into my banking career and about 3 years in, I was working with small business companies, and I sat down and I was sitting at a restaurant, and there's a guy who had been a lifelong business owner. He bought and sold businesses and real estate. And he said, I had an opportunity to jump into commercial banking, but it was a lateral move financially. And similarly to what you're talking about, he said, the opportunities that come with education is 10 times the value of any salary and any W-2. And it just opens the door for incredible opportunities. So I love that you're emphasizing the educational side, because it just gets overlooked a lot.
Absolutely. I really think in order to find out who you are, you've got to try a lot of different things. Maybe I could have been a great dentist. I don't know, but I think you have to test the waters, try some new things, try different asset classes, try different investments. I tried my hand at day trading. Guess what? I lost a lot of money, and I said, this is not for me. But you got to know what you aren't before you can know what you are.
I love that. That's such a fantastic quote. I love that you had a mentor at the business who was able to speak in to say, quit chasing money, make yourself valuable, work hard until money chases you. That's a wonderful mindset shift. I think especially too in the sort of economic times that we're in, where there's a lot more instability. And I think a lot of people, especially kind of in the tech industry, are concerned about their jobs and questions about AI and what is AI going to replace in terms of the workforce. But if you're constantly making yourself valuable, if you're constantly building your education, then you're always going to have value to provide. And I mean, you've kind of hinted at this, but do you have some thoughts on being a generalist versus being highly specialized? Like, how do you see yourself in that? Have you intentionally tried to have a general understanding of all things business, or have you found that no, there's 2 or 3 things that I've really honed in on, and because I've really focused my education and experience on those, that's my superpower. I can plug in anywhere if they need these couple of things.
Yeah, it's well said. I think it's changed over time, and I think that's okay. When you're young, when you have less opportunities or less experience, it's okay to start really broad and try to find out a lot about a lot of things. And hopefully very quickly in your career, whatever that means, you're starting to focus that in. And I think, there's no age limit on that, but once you start really knowing what you like and what you're drifting towards what tendencies do you have? Where do you get excited?
Mm-hmm.
I was reading a book this morning about a knack, a KNACK, CK, what's your knack for learning? Where do you find yourself the most passionate? That's where you start to focus in and really, to quote a wise man I've heard recently, said, go build your bridge, right? Focus on your one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy, especially in real estate and investing, to get excited about all the shiny objects out there, because there are so many cool things you could do. There are so many cool ideas and amazing people. But if I try to be a generalist in 10 things or more, I'm going to be average at best.
Yeah.
Right now, I consider myself, a storage guy, right?
Yeah.
People come to me and ask me for advice on storage, and I love that, by the way. And to me, it's free education. But if you want to ask me about, I don't know, cap rate compression and federal fund rates, I know just a little bit enough to have a conversation, but I leave that up to you, Nick. I mean, that's your thing. So I think that's important to specialize and then know where your gaps are. So those are the kind of partners that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Find someone to fill in your own gaps with people and knowledge, rather than trying to know it all yourself.
Yeah. And that actually leads to sort of a question that I jotted down as you were talking about your partnership with Open Door Capital. As you were going out to start to build your own thing with self-storage, and kind of realized, hey, I know all of the operational side of this, but the fundraising is totally foreign. I mean, given all of your experience, network connections, I'm sure that if you wanted to, you could have figured that out and learned it. But I'm curious, just your perspective on partnership. You obviously chose not to go out and learn those things and leverage whatever connections you had, and instead find, all right, who's already doing this really well, the capital raising side, how do I partner with them? So one, why partner? But I think more interestingly, like, how do you choose a partner? Why Open Door when there's 100 other syndication capital raising groups that you probably could have gone with, and how do you pick a partner to work with?
That is a very introspective question. To me, I've worked for a lot of people over the years, and I think there's something to learn from each person that I've worked for, positive or negative. But I definitely learned a lot of things that I don't want in life, the people that I don't want to work with, the attitudes, the methodologies, the tendencies. And so when I'm looking for a partner, I was looking for just good, like-minded, energetic, God-fearing people. And I could be specific. I didn't have to worry about, to your point, Nick, you just said this, that there's a lot of people that can raise money. Mm-hmm. But there are only a few people. If you start to cut that back and say, okay, there's only a few that are like-minded. There are only a few that are Christian. There are only a few that are this, and it starts getting smaller and smaller. And when I met Brandon Turner for the first time, it was actually ironically at a storage conference. He was a keynote speaker. I didn't even know the guy, but I listened to him speak, and the concepts and ideas that he shared, I was like, this is a good guy. Like, he knows his stuff, and I would love to work with him someday. It wasn't until another year later before I had that opportunity to even consider it. And I started out as an investor. I tested the waters with him first as a passive investor first. And then once I met him and I realized that they had a hole, I was able to say, I can plug it. And we immediately, like, it literally took a couple of days before we're like, we're going to make this work. And it was a good marriage. So cool. I think partners, like you said, you get to pick. You don't ever have to feel like you're forced into a partnership. And some partners work, some don't. And it's okay to shake hands and walk away because you disagree on something. But partners, just like a marriage, should be two people willing to give 100%, not two people giving 50% each. Mm-hmm. So you got to really do your homework, get to know somebody.
It's well put.
Yeah, no, I think that's super good. And, a lot of times the proverbial wisdom, I think a lot of people are afraid for bringing on partners. I've seen that both as a banker with businesses. They want to wear all the hats. Or, kind of like with what you're talking about, there's this fear of, if I bring in the wrong partner, I'm ruined. But again, some of the conversations we've had with people, even though maybe those relationships didn't come to an end, the lessons, the network, and the better together mentality, I think that ultimately keeps you moving forward.
Well said. Well said.
Let me ask you this here, David. Going back, I keep going back to those extra space days, but I'm curious here in terms of deciding to go ahead and go out on your own. Again, making good money, high level in the company. What was some fear at that time around leaving the world you had known? I mean, you were right there reporting to the top guys, well liked, you left on good terms. So I think a lot of people get into that position and ultimately they say, hey, like, I'm just going to ride it out. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. So I know there was the motivation to build your own thing, but what were some fears and maybe your process of go ahead and, deciding to leave?
Yeah, that's deep. Yeah, it's hard to walk away from a good job from people you like. Extra Space has a really cool office and a great culture. They even have an espresso machine in the office. It's just all there. They had everything. It was a full package. Um, I think it's really difficult to break that mindset of comfort versus opportunity. I mean, you will never know what you're capable of accomplishing unless you get out there and you step outside your comfort zone, step into the dark just a little bit, and say, "Hey, what else is there?" And I'm not telling people that they should, never be content. Um, I think there's a moment and a very good time for contentedness, and there's a moment and the time for just taking a step of faith. I mean, anybody that's ever been married, and talk about a big step of faith, right?
Sure.
You know this girl for whatever period of time, and you finally commit. Once you commit, you put everything into it, and you're content. So, I mean, it's risk, and I think you have to take the kind of risk that you're ready for. I'm totally fine. There are people still at Extra Space over, say 20 years now that are still there. That's fantastic. That works for them. There's actually a book I read a couple of years ago. A friend passed along. It was called The Psychology of Money. It's a Morgan Housel. And he had this quote that said, I'm probably going to slaughter it, but it said, don't take financial cues from people playing different game than you are.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not all playing basketball, we're not on the same court. I mean, we're all playing a different game. You got to do it your way. You got to try different things. Just because it worked really well for David Decker doesn't mean you should get into storage. Just because banking is really cool, you shouldn't follow Nick. Whatever it might be, do what works for you. But try different things and see where that your specialty really is going to be. I hope that answers most of the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right, to recognize the game that you're playing. I think too, everyone has a different risk tolerance, and that's a feature, not a bug of human society, right? Like we we don't want every person at Extra Space or in any given business to have the entrepreneurial bug, and because we'd never build anything if everybody was just leaving all the time to go out and start their own thing. And so I think that is good to recognize that, hey, there's no shame in sticking to a job where you're finding fulfillment and you're adding value to a company and you're part of something that you like and that you're building. But for you, you definitely did say, all right, I see an opportunity here that's going to stretch me outside of my comfort zone. I like the phrase you used of stepping into the dark a little bit and not knowing exactly what was going to come. Sticking with the theme here of getting deep into the waters, I mean, a question I guess that I have related to that is, how do you make those calculations about stepping into the dark or taking risk when you do have a wife and kids? Do you feel like that was part of why you waited maybe 13 years at Extra Space before going out on your own, because of the season of life that your kids were in? Or how do you think that our audience, as their entrepreneurially minded group, should balance the risk that they feel like they need to take to chase opportunities and the impacts that can have on a family based on your own experience and what you've seen?
No, well said. I think you have to realize that when I moved the first time from Extra Space, we were living near family. We had, like I said, a good job, good pay. Relatively, my kids were young. My oldest was in his young teens at the time. So it was easier to move. But that first move really shook us up as a family, right? You lose your roots, you kind of cut that off. I'm the only kid in my family that has grandkids, and so my parents were shaking their heads like, "What are you doing, taking our kids away?" Grandkids. Um, there's absolutely repercussions of every decision that you make that just don't affect you, unless you're just a single guy, living the life.
Yeah.
So moving out is tough. And really, to us, it was more a move to not just again chase a title or a position, but to expand our horizons. Growing up in Utah, it's a pretty secluded place, a wonderful, wonderful place. You've never been there, but I wasn't exposing my family to diversity of ideas and people, and all they saw is the Wasatch Front Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say, hey, let's go try something else. And so one of the pieces that I think is critical to that decision making is having a sounding board, someone that you trust, someone that you can go to and say, look, am I just doing this because of ego, or am I doing this because it's the right thing? For me, that's my wife, and it's God. And I spent a lot of time soul searching to say, is this the right thing? And if my wife didn't agree, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
No matter how strongly I felt about it. So I think that's super important to have that person in your life, whether it's a spouse or a friend, or even just a mentor, someone you can go to and spill your guts to, and really dial it back as to what the next step in your life is going to be. And let them be critical.
Love it.
You've talked mentor a couple times, and you've mentioned that, and again, with your approach to things, it sounds like some mentors have just happened by way of work. And is that something what's given you a desire to seek mentors? Is that something that you try to just find people and start asking questions, or is that relationship earned over time? Walk me through kind of your approach with mentorship, because one, you've talked about having great mentors, but two, you've talked about being a mentor as well.
Yeah, no, I think once you understand the value of mentorship in general, and I think this goes even broader than just people, but books, podcasts, friends, that doesn't matter. You've got to insert as much truth into your life as you possibly can, so you can filter down. I'm a statistician by heart. So I believe in the more samples that you collect, the more closer to accuracy that you get. And you could think about if all you watched was whatever news station that you say to watch the news, you would have a very biased opinion of the world. But if you can watch 5 or 6 different versions of the same news, you start to come to a truth center. And so I believe that. Now, I didn't come to that realization on my own by any means. Like I said, that first good mentor in grad school was just an eye-opening experience for me to have someone that just cared about me. He got nothing out of it, right? He even paid for my lunches. But he was taking care of me, and I'm forever indebted to him. Since then, I've been able, because I feel like I need to pay the world back. I'm doing the same thing. I never turned down an opportunity to mentor somebody. I've mentored, dozens of grad students in the same program with my alumni association. And since then, being part of this mastermind group, Nick, that you mentioned earlier, reaching out to people and just saying, you look like a really interesting person. Tell me what's your superpower. I think, Nick, that's how you and I met at first.
That's right.
Just some random conversation. And we could be so far apart in our lifestyle and our ideas, but we probably have something in common that we can grow from. And Nick, you would offer me some great advice. You asked me, you had some self-storage buddies that were working on some stuff and wanted some advice. So you just give and take. Like I said, the $1 million investment that I talked about before, that came from a student that I was mentoring. And he trusted me and he said, hey, would you consider being an angel investor in my deal? Wow. So I think it's give and take. It's not just give, or take. It really, you get what you give. And so I think it's important to just reach out, download as much as you possibly can, read books, listen to podcasts, and talk to as many people as you possibly can. And you'll find the people that you gravitate towards and have those relationships grow. And it just happens. Yep. That's what we're here for. We're all human. We all need help.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the power of network, the power of relationships, you continue to share that. But I mean, you've lived it and you've experienced that. And I think you just can't underscore that enough. Let's shift a little bit. Since we have the storage guru on here, I am curious just your thoughts with the state of the market, and again, I mean, let's channel it because there's folks who have been in the space a long time and done it really well. What about folks who maybe haven't looked into storage in the past? Is it a bad time? Is it a good time? What are some advice for, hey, if this is a path you want to go down, start here. Again, take it where you want, but I thought it'd be great just to kind of start talking a little bit about storage here since we got you on the line.
Love to. I still think, and I'm very bullish on storage. I still think that storage is a great investment. Um, I do want to be very clear. There's a lot of people wanting to get into the storage world as investors because they see the returns, because they see the quote unquote the ease of storage, but they really don't realize that this is a business, not just an asset class that you buy. It's not a mutual fund. This is an asset class that you have to own and operate. Now, that being said, it's a lot easier than having a fourplex and having to fix toilets and take phone calls at midnight and dealing with fights and collecting rent. The things I love about storage is it's I'm spreading out my paycheck, my income over 500 customers that come and they stay. It's a very sticky business. Once they're here, they stay forever. I also have month-to-month leases. I have a monthly lease that allows the customer to come and go as they need, so it leaves them freedom, but it also allows me to change the rate as the market changes. As I add value, I can immediately change the price of that unit, whether they moved in yesterday or 6 years ago. So in theory, I'll paint a picture. If I buy a property, let's just say for $1 million, and I have this income stream coming in, let's say $20,000, $30,000 a month. Well, that's a lot for a $1 million property, but regardless, let's say we have this income stream coming in. I immediately can identify where that property can be maximized by, increasing marketing spend, putting up better signage, cleaning up the property, professional management. And really, again, it comes back down to valuation and pricing. I can come in and set a new market rate, raise the customers up to that market rate. Let's just say it's a 15 or 20% increase. Most of those customers don't move out. So I get a 20% increase in NOI on day 30 of me taking over this property, and my valuation just went up the entire property by 15 to 20%. Multiply that or divide that by a cap rate, and all of a sudden I've got a $2 million property, right? So it's just an incredible asset class that you can do that. Now you have to find the right property. And one little tidbit, I think and why I like storage. I was showing a map to somebody the other day of all of the storage development that's happening right now. There's like 3,000 new storage facilities in late stage of development right now. That doesn't matter. Like for example, my deal in Schenectady, New York, I only care about what's within 3 to 4 miles of what my property is. It's a micro market. I don't have to worry about, with multifamily, you might be pulling people from 20 or 50 miles away and competing with every single other apartment building in that area. Storage within 3 to 5 miles, I probably have 4 or 5 competitors. They might have 200 to 400 doors each on a population of 200,000 people. So, I mean, there's really a great place for building. It has to be done wisely, right? You can't just put this up wherever and expect it to fill up. You got to find those pockets where the population can support the amount of competition, including you, that's there. I think that's a great way to start in this business is to find those markets that already exist, acquire something small so you get your feet wet, look for high occupancies and high demand so you don't have to worry about that. And then just look at the optimization part. How can I make it that much better? Because a 20% swing in optimization in all those things that I listed before is a major swing in valuation. And you could you could almost flip the property within a few years. And there's a lot of guys out there doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a gold mine of an industry, but you really got to do it carefully. Got to be careful about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's good.
And for those that are getting started that don't have a ton of capital, Where is the best place, do you think, for them to look? Is it trying to find mismanaged, locally owned and operated store? Is it do they need to immediately find some capital partners and try and find something that's a little bit more established? I don't know. Where would you have folks go, or maybe even just what are the options to create categories for people to consider for how they get started here?
Yeah, if I knew what I knew now, I would have to start from total scratch. I had no money to my name. I would start by my own neighborhood. I would look around at who the competitors are and literally find out who the owner is and take them to coffee
Yeah.
and just say, what's going on? Tell me about your facility. This is a cool place. Tell me the history. And at some point when that relationship allows it to be said, have you ever considered selling this place?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a surprising amount of people that, again, this industry started, people will claim it started 30 or 40 years ago, but most people that got into storage is in the last 20 years. These guys, I mean, you think about owning a facility for 20 years or 30 years, there's a lot of, it's funny, you use the word goat for the greatest of all time, but there's a lot of goats of getting old and tired out there as well. And those are the guys that, look, it might make sense to, do some seller financing or do something creative to help transition this. You guarantee me an income for the next 10 years or 5 years, and you take over my property. I think there's great opportunities. And by the way, there's facilities you can get into for a couple $100,000, meaning the down payment, and you can finance the rest. So there's not, you don't have to start at a $10 million property. There's all sizes of storage. But I think it's that relationship again, build, local knowledge of who they are, talk to them. Now, if I wanted to go bigger than that, both to your point that you're interested in storage, there's a lot of people out there that would love to get involved. So what I have found with our syndication that I just launched, we'll be just starting our fundraising next week, is that there is an abundance of people. There are tons of people that want to put money into a deal because they don't know anything about it. And by the way, it's a great way to start to learn the business is if you can get that accredited status and have $50,000 or $100,000, it's a great way to learn the business because you get all the operating reports, you get to hear the commentaries, you get to see the ups and downs.
Yeah,
it's not a cheap education, but it's a good education. I found we've already likely oversubscribed. I mean, we haven't even launched it yet.
Wow.
Wow.
People will chase good deals. So getting excited about the deal attracts the money. So there's opportunities to partner. There's opportunities to fundraise. You could, bootstrap this thing yourself. Start small. Again, I've seen some units. I was talking to a friend that was looking at doing a 30-door storage unit. 30 doors. Again, the thing only cash flowed a couple grand a month, but what a great way to start. And they'll probably flip it and make a few $100,000. So there's lots of ways to do it. The money will come. The money will come. And it's surprising. And banks actually really like this asset class if they've never done it before. Yeah, it's a stable asset, so it's not actually too difficult to find funding for.
Yeah. Well, and there's banks that love it, and there's banks that maybe don't know it. And it all comes back to relationships. I mean, we've continued to say that through this episode, but it's the same with banks. I mean, find a bank that knows these and likes these and look to partner. So I think the opportunities are out there. You just got to be the one willing to do the work. And I think that's a huge thing with what you've continued to say. Let me ask you this, besides, folks who are new in this space, besides them treating it as just real estate and not a business that they have to learn and operate, what are some other common mistakes you see folks make early on as they're exploring this?
I think one of the biggest and what's punishing a lot of operators today, I'll say investors today, is having too much optimism, right? They go to a conference, they hear someone's stories, they see someone's Instagram feed on, how much money I made on this deal. And there's a lot of influencers out there in this space that are sharing good information, but you only see the good, right? You rarely see the bankruptcies and the bank foreclosures and everything that comes into that. I think too much optimism is bad. So, for example, you might say, a builder says, "Hey, look, I can go put in $1 million and I can build a $10 million facility and I'll sell it the day it's built, or I'll build it or operate it myself." And so they over leverage themselves, and they put way too much stress on the deal so that it doesn't work. These things take time. The average property from entitlement or for buying the land up until it's, I'm going to call it leased up or stabilized, is usually a few years, 3, 4, 5 years from ground up development. And even if the construction takes a year, you just think, I'm going to make a ton of money, but a lot of things happened in a year. The past year, all of us are kind of shaking our head, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of builders out there right now that are backwards because they're in variable loans, and they're now trying to service debt that's skyrocketing with zero cash flow. So again, it's just that over optimism. You got to have reserves. You got to have a backup plan, and you need to have good operations. This isn't for everybody. You shouldn't do it if you don't know it, or find someone that knows how.
Yeah. That's really good. And I love the recommendation to start in your neighborhood, develop the relationships with the owners, operators around you, see if you can find a deal in where you live, work, play already. That's good. I am, so you, with your portfolio and just with where you've worked, I mean, you mentioned earlier in the conversation here that you've got facilities that you're part of that are kind of all over the country. And so do you see this as an asset that as young operators start to grow and scale, like if you find one in your neighborhood, how hard is it to make the jump once you kind of are in the space to then doing something that's on the other side of the country? And what are the challenges that trying to own and operate from a distance create?
It can be done. It can be done. I think it's important. Again, don't be too overly optimistic. There's a lot of people saying these things can be managed from your cell phone. They're just a remote management. We did just buy a property from an owner operator who happened to be a real estate agent that bought this as part of a portfolio, and he literally was running the property from a cell phone. Every call came to him. He took their information, took the credit card, typed it in his computer, and sent him a code to get into the gate, and they put a lock on it. So it can be done, and I've seen a lot of partnerships do that. There's very cool technology that's coming around right now with kiosks, with mobile leasing, digital signature stuff for contracting, Bluetooth locks and access. There's a few companies out there that offer this. You could lock and unlock doors from 2,000 miles away. There is some ways to do it remotely, and not impossible, but I would say it's probably not the best way to start.
Yeah,
I'd rather learn it. And guy, I would say literally go work for a storage company.
Sure.
Go put in 3, 4, 6 months, whatever. Just say, look, I'll run the front desk for you.
Yeah.
You probably make 18 to $20 an hour. Not glorious, but just learn the business. So show a story. I had an employee of mine. I was a district manager who did just that. He worked for me for about a year, and then one day I was looking at the competition online trying to get the rates, and I found this one thing that said, XYZ Storage. It was his last name or something. I was like, hey man, is this related to you? He's like, oh yeah, I just finished building it. Like I have to quit now probably. And by the way, super bright guy. I mean, what a great way to do it. And he had access, he knew the sales process now. He knew how to price. He knew how to take care of a property. So yeah, go work for somebody.
Yeah.
And then maybe you could offer to buy it from him in the future. I mean, there's so many great ways to get in the business.
Yeah.
It was a shocker for sure. And he's done like 3 or 4 units of property since.
Good for him.
Wow.
That's
yeah.
I love that advice too. And it, it's consistent in keeping with what you were saying of that it's like, hey, don't chase the money, become valuable, get your education, and the money will chase after you. 100%. And I'm sure that the guy that you're referring to is living proof of that as well. I'm sure his friends did not find it impressive when he was working for you at the hourly wage at the front desk, but I'm sure they're jealous of him now as he's buying them drinks off of his self-storage earnings.
Well said. So, yes.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, this has been great, David. What I'd love to do is just transition real quick to our golden nugget round. And you've given us a lot of stuff here, I think, in terms of mentors and quotes. But we're going to do it just because I love ending on these questions. And ultimately, I think, your heartbeat with giving back and looking for ways to help people and give. I love that. So let's jump into these. These are the same 4 questions we ask our guests. So the first one here is pick one of the 5 F's we talk about at Abundant Journey. Just pick one of these that you're working on improving or growing in this year. So we got family, finance, faith, fitness, and future.
Well, that's a tough one. I think, an interesting thing. I made a goal this year on my family relationships. Again, I have 6 kids and a wonderful wife. I think I'm pretty close to them, but spreading myself out for 7 people is really tough. And so I made it a goal, and not perfect yet. I'm still trying to make this habit. Is that I spend at least one day a week dedicated to one of my kids or my wife. And that means just going and getting a froyo together, or going to the park and throwing the ball around, or going on a date night with my wife. But I have to intentionally schedule time with them to take that one-on-one time. And that's a goal that I hope I can master someday.
I love that. That's great. I mean, and I love that that's an emphasis and a focus, because as busy as you are, I mean, you're building out a new team, you're building out a new opportunities with Open Door. You got a facility on your own you're building. I know with us talking, you've got other deals you're working on, but yet you've got to keep the primary. And so investing in those relationships and just making that a habit. I mean, we talk so much about that at Better Life Tribe, you and I, as we're both a part of. So that's an awesome answer. Next one here, again, you've given us a few of these already, but what's a quote from a book or mentor that stuck with you along your journey?
I live on a lot of books. This is a pretty deep quote. This came early in my life. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said that, and I'll change the words just slightly so it's more politically correct, but it's every person that I meet is my superior in some way. In that I learn of them. And what I gather from that, and it probably comes without saying with what you've learned today from me, but every single person I meet, it could be the grocery store bagger, could be my Uber driver, could be the CEO across the table. Someone has something to learn, or someone has something to give and teach me. They're an expert at something that I'm not. And it's my job to dig that out and find out what that is. So I have to learn from each person I meet. Take that time.
You got to have that interwoven into your DNA, teachable and humble. And I love that. And that propels you so much further. So having that mindset with people, that's awesome. Next one here. And you did kind of just even answer this one, but what's a dream or goal that you have that you've not been able to make happen yet?
Oh, geez. I'm going to pivot a little bit, maybe surprise you. My goal in life is to give my kids a chance earlier in life than I did. To find success. And I have no desire to leave my kids millions of dollars and make lots and lots of money and have a private jet. My goal is to make them have that vision of who they are and what they can be. And I think my dream is to see, I hope all my kids, but at least some of my kids really get that bug for entrepreneurship, real estate. I have a 16-year-old son that's out showing me Zillow listings all the time. Like, Dad, let's buy this one. Let's buy this one. We're sitting in the car driving to a football game, and he's like, Dad, tell me about depreciation. Like, what does that mean? So he's starting to get it, but I want the day that I can give them a check that they earned 100% of because of the deal. That's my vision. I love that opportunity. That's what I'm looking forward to.
It sounds like you're well on your way with that one, which is exciting. Last one here. At the end of your life, what do you hope you'll be remembered for?
Ooh. I don't think I'm going to ever die. No. No. I had a little bit of backstory before I give the answer here. My younger brother, I had a younger brother, he was 25 in 2008, and he passed away. A young guy, and you would never expect, right? When it's our time to go, it's time to go. But 1 year before he had passed away, it was a New Year's Eve day. He actually was playing with fireworks, some Roman candles, and it took his hand off at the wrist. And don't if you're going to get fireworks, don't go to Mexico to get those. But he blew off his hand, and from the day that happened, it changed his life. He was studying to be a chiropractor. That changes a lot, right?
Yeah.
He was a professional trumpet player, which again, it took off his hand. So his life changed dramatically. He was a tennis player. I mean, all these great things. He was engaged to be married, and he spent his whole life from that day forward, which is, again, from the time that happened to when he actually passed away, for that 1 year. So it wasn't a long time, to making other people comfortable. And after he passed away, he actually had died in a boating accident. He had jumped in the water off this boat during a storm to try and save the stuff, the oars and the life jackets and things that had blown off. He was trying to save the rest of the people in the boat, and the water overtook him and he drowned. But what we found after he passed away, once we were, putting together his service and obituaries and things, is we found a list that he had created and saved for himself, his affirmations. And the number one affirmation was that people are always more important. And his last one was, I will never be a victim. And how that played out, again, I'm talking 1 year, his funeral services, we attended a very large church, and it was standing room only. There were hundreds and hundreds of people that showed up for this service. Most of them barely knew him, didn't know us from anybody. Just this 25-year-old, college student who had made an impact in so many people's lives, just in small ways. I mean, he threw pirate parties because he had a hook. I mean, he just did the coolest things. And I guess my goal at the end of this is that I can put people first and somehow get to God with my last day, and he says, "Hey, well done. You did this. Well done." And that's I hope what I'm remembered for. So I got there.
It's a beautiful story, man. Thank you so much for
thanks for asking,
for sharing that. And I always, it's a deep question, but I always love it. Love how people respond. And that's one of my favorite responses. And that's so true. People are always more important. Put people first. I'm grateful for the ways that you're doing that. I'm grateful for the ways that you've done that in sharing your time with us and our listeners here, and all of the wonderful wisdom and thoughts that you've been able to impart to us. For anybody who...
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for anybody who would like to connect with you, to kind of keep up with what you're doing, what are some of the best places for them to go, whether that's website or social media profiles or Open Door Capital, if you want to send them there?
Sure.
Where are the best spots?
Yeah, I like I said, I'm not a real out there guy. I probably should do a better job. Look me up on LinkedIn. I always love to connect with people. You can email me directly. My private email address, daviddecker@gmail.com. I'm always happy to answer questions or talk shop, or I know, like I said, I'm probably going to learn more from you than you learn from me, but I'm happy to have that conversation. And yeah, interested in investing, by all means, jump into Open Door Capital and check them out. They have some pretty cool investments that we've been working on. And hopefully I'll launch my own syndication here next week, and who knows where that'll go.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I will include links to all of those spots in the show notes. David, would love to stay in touch and just continue to hear about what you're doing, and maybe have you back on in a year or so to talk about how your syndication deal is going, and also hear how many miles you're up to in those ultra marathons with another year of training under your belt.
No pressure, guys. Man.
Yeah, no doubt.
Talking about accountability.
No, but all the best to you in your race next month. That's going to be awesome. 50 miles is more than I can wrap my head around, but I'm sure you hear that all the time. Listeners, thank you so much for coming along this journey with us. If you found valuable content here, please do let us know by leaving a rating on the show. And the best thing that you can do is to share it with a friend. You can also check out abundantjourney.net. There's a link to sign up for our newsletter so that you never miss out on all the good things that are happening as Abundant Journeys community continues to grow. So thanks, everybody. We will be back again very soon.
Thanks, guys.